Iberian lighthouse enthusiast Indigo is a 4-star mystic caster who was kicked out and forced to go touch grass. With no enemies in range, mystic casters store up to 3 attacks and release them all in a single powerful shot, rivaling the performance of a teenage boy. Unfortunately, a 3-second attack interval means that storing these attacks is about as slow as I was when performing her physical examination. Her first skill is Lighthouse Guardian. She trades girth for length and a significantly reduced attack interval at the cost of half damage. The critical thing about Lighthouse Guardian is that, like you, it only lasts 4 seconds, which is a good thing because its purpose is to stockpile attack charges. Limiting her range forces Indigo into attacking Surtur's personality, allowing her to store attacks faster than Wildmane can break my pelvis. When her girth returns, Indigo can then blast her enemies with a light so blinding it'll give you flashbacks to 230,000 words of Kazimierzyan lore. Lighthouse Guardian is a skill shared amongst mystic casters. Most of the time, it's a tactical reload, but you may consider asking Indigo to focus on the tip just a little bit more if you're as close as a lighthouse is to the sea. Strangely, Indigo's version lasts 4 seconds instead of 5, and while this will barely ever make a difference, a good rule to go by is that it's not important until it is. Careful positioning and timing is crucial for both mystic casters and whatever it is you're planning to do with Indigo tonight. But luckily for you, Indigo is certainly all too eager to help you find your way in the dark with her second skill, Labyrinth of Light. Attack interval reduced and her talent is much more likely to activate. Additionally, bound enemies in range are doomed to an eternity of being tickled to death. Indigo's talent Gentle Binding Gaze gives her a chance to bind on every attack, but more importantly, she will not target bound enemies. This has the same functionality as Squeezing the Shaft, allowing Indigo to store up and unload all of her pent-up frustrations once they break free. At only a 60% chance, Gentle Binding Gaze does lend some unpredictability to both Indigo's damage output and her capability to reliably lock down her foes with that demure and flowing elegance that has been unable to infiltrate her mildly naive and inexplicably ditzy nature. Labyrinth of Light is generally the superior skill because it's much less reliant on positioning, and binding enemies prevents them from obscuring my view of Indigo's graceful figure on the battlefield. However, the uptime is not great, and realize that nowhere in her kit is Indigo actually increasing the damage she deals. Any extra damage comes in the form of DPS, or from the minor psychological damage of imposing a tickling fetish upon her unfortunate foes. And speaking of tickling fetish, since Indigo only has enough time to stockpile 2 attacks during her own bind, roping her in with the BDSM squad can force her to charge just a little bit more. However, I would generally caution against this because assembling such a group and letting them go down on the enemy probably violates one of the Geneva Conventions. What I'm saying is that tickling the enemy is just foreplay, and you should probably get on with the main event before it starts to hurt. And while we're on the subject of cock and ball torture, Indigo's module staff maintenance kit, aside from being a gentle hint in your direction, features the base Mystic Caster X module, raising the stockpile limit from 3 attacks to 4. The upgrades increase the chance to bind, making Labyrinth of Light's talent multiplier even more effective, but it's still only 81%. As much as I want to escape, Indigo's chance to wrap her enemies in violet coils of violence will inevitably bring me back to seeing red. Notably, the module also gives 4 attack speed, which despite being multiplied by both skills, is about as noticeable as a coastal reef is to a drunken sailor. Overall, her module is absolutely unnecessary to her effectiveness as an operator. However, it does make the RNG a little bit more tolerable, a lesson, unfortunately, that MiHoYo has yet to learn. Mystic casters have not been a hot topic when it comes to the meta. Iris is okay beyond invading my dreams, and Abenholz does such big dick damage that the core issues of the subclass don't matter. Indigo, being a 4-star, unfortunately lacks amplification to scale her damage beyond sea level to the high tides you see in every Abenholz showcase ever. She often does way too much or way too little damage, and you will inevitably see Indigo waste all 4 of her carefully stored attacks on an enemy who didn't deserve it, only for them to be replaced by something that actually matters. Though that's not to say that Indigo doesn't know how to steer her own ship. She still has the 2nd highest attack of any 4-star, and similarly to fellow Iberian Andriana, who I've covered previously, deleting a large portion of the enemy's health without actually killing them is still a useful ability to have. No matter how small, that's one less enemy you have to deal with. It's just a shame that experiencing the wonder that is Indigo means that you actually have to play the game instead of staring at her thigh. At the end of the day, Indigo suffers from being a 4-star damage dealer. She has good damage for a 4-star. She has passable utility for a 4-star, and when it comes to how much I like her, she's probably 4 stars out of 5. But if you are the type of doctor that needs a recommendation, Indigo is a hard pass. There are operators who deal way more damage, are way more specialized, and critically are much easier to use. Like I said, at the end of the day, Indigo suffers from being a 4-star damage dealer. But at the end of the day, Indigo is that shining beacon of light in the darkness that will guide you safely home. And if home is where the heart is, then when it comes to Mystic Caster and Lighthouse Enthusiast Arya, home is, comparatively at least, not very far away.